Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth tutorial of this video series, and in this video we're going to be looking at how to correctly hide your database connection credential in an environment file on your web server. So to be able to do this, we're going to need to install Composer, which is a PHP package manager. And so I'm going to visit the web URL address getcomposer.org. Okay, and so upon loading this page, you'll see a download button. I'm just going to open that in a new tab. And then I'm going to just download and run Composer setup.exe onto my system. I'm just going to save this in my downloads directory. I already have that downloaded. You can go ahead and do that on your own. To install this, just navigate to your downloads directory inside of your Windows Explorer under Programs. Just double click that, say install for all users, allow setup. I'm not going to tick the developer mode because I would like to be able to uninstall this later. So I'm just going to click next, next, wait for it to install, say next, next. Okay, so at this point I can close my Windows Explorer as well as my browser window, and then I'm just going to click on finish. So once you go to control panel, you can see that I now have Composer installed on my system. Okay, and so I can uninstall it if I wish, but I'm going to need that. Okay, so now that I have Composer and I have a website folder over here on my desktop in which I have two files. The first is my index file, which is what I will be dumping on my web server under public_HTML using the FileZilla file transfer protocol program. But for now, I just wanted to illustrate to you how we can use Composer to set up the correct package or library to be able to use the environment file and the environment variables inside of our index file over here. So I'm just going to close that website file, and then I'm just going to drag and drop my website folder onto my Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to not open any folders and just make sure that I've selected the website folder inside. If yours looks like this and you would like to open a terminal, you're going to press Control together with the tilde, which is the first key on your keyboard, like with the back tick. The tilde is that little symbol, like a squiggly symbol, just left to that of the one on your keyboard, and it'll open a new terminal inside of your code editor. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write Composer just to show you that I have it installed. It'll give you all the help options over here, and it'll give you all the commands for using Composer. But what we're going to do is we're going to install a package, require, and then the package that I would like to install, which is called vlucas/php.env. So I'm going to type this command into my terminal: Composer require vlucas/php.env. So no actual dot, I spelled out .dot, and then env for environment. Okay, so if I press enter, it'll just download, and you'll see that a new file was created, composer.json. It'll also create a new file called composer.lock over there, and then it'll also create this vendor folder over here, under which it'll then install all the correct or all the necessary library or package information that I will need later. Okay, so now I have everything that I need to be able to set up my server with hidden environment variables. Okay, I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to open the FileZilla FTP protocol program, and I'm going to connect it to my server. You should already know how to do that since we've already explained this in the second tutorial. I'm going to connect to my web server and just grant access. Okay, and then I'm going to visit the public_HTML directory, and inside I don't have anything. You may have an index file inside of there already, but I'm just going to do it the easy way and start fresh and take everything that we've just created inside of the website folder. I'm just going to take all that and dump it into my public_HTML directory, and I'm just going to wait for that to complete. Okay, so I can close my Windows Explorer, and once this is finished uploading, I can also close that. Once I've uploaded all that content to my public_HTML directory, I can close the FileZilla program. We will now continue managing our web files on the server. By logging in, I will then be able to access my hosting, go to my website domain, Website Manager, and logging into Website Manager will take me to the cPanel. As always, I will then go into the File Manager, open that in a new tab, and then access the public underscore HTML directory. Now I can work from here, in which I have an index.php file as well as this environment file. So basically what this environment file is just a file which doesn't have any name, but it has an extension .env. And if I open that, I just want to show you what's inside, because basically what this is our database credentials. So at the very top you'll see I have a line here that says the below data is sensitive information and should be kept secret at all times. And that is the case. We don't want to reveal any of that to the real world. In the previous tutorial 3, when we connected to our database, we needed these 4 variables to be able to connect to the database securely. And that was the database server name, as well as the database username, the database password, the database name, which were set equals to these strings over here. Okay, so the first one in quotation marks is your website server. Mine is .aserv.co.za. I have my database username, which is underscore user, and then I have my database password, which is, and then I have my database name, which is underscore mydb. Okay, so since this is not PHP code, you must not include a semicolon at the end of your string, and you also don't need to declare that these are variables by using the $sign in front of your variable name. Your system will understand that this is a variable by setting an equals sign and then equal to that string. Okay, so I'm just going to close that because I haven't made any changes. Alright, so now since we have a vendor folder over here and we've installed vlookup.php.env package over here, we can then use this library in the most appropriate way. And we're going to do that by opening up our index folder in which we establish a connection to our database. And inside you will no longer see any sensitive credentials. So what's happening here is from this line 16 all the way down, basically everything is the same as in the third tutorial. The only difference is that I no longer have the variables set as strings as before. I might have to set my server name as .aserv.co.za, but instead I'm referring to that string instead by using a $sign underscore capital ENV, and inside of the square brackets I refer to the name of the variable in the environment file by using quotation marks, and inside the quotation marks I have db server name. Okay, so in the same sense that we have the environment variables, and then the same for the database username, I'm referring to the variable inside of the environment file. Okay, but for this to be correctly understood by our environment library, we need to call the following methods and load the vendor packager into our file. We do that by writing this line of code which says require underscore once, and then using the double underscore directory and then double underscore append to that this string over here in inverted commas, which refers to the directory in which our autoload function is placed. Okay, so we're going to have a /vendor/autoload. So if in case you have placed your vendor package in some other directory, then you're going to have to refer to that using the correct file path. So for example, if it was inside a different folder, I'll do that and then I'll say vendor autoload. And so yeah, that'll correctly go and locate this file, which is called autoload.php. Okay, and then I will also have to call this variable .env and point to the load method, which basically just loads the environment variables inside of that file. It just goes and finds the correct variables and then it loads it into this file specifically. And so this line that points to the required method basically just states that if these variables are not inside of the environment file, then it will give me an error and it will just warn me that there are some variables that I'm referring to that are not inside of that file, and I should actually go and declare them before I can actually use that file, okay, or any variables in that file. And so you wouldn't want to refer to a variable that doesn't exist inside of that file. For example, email address, because if I look inside of that file, there is no email address inside of that. Okay, it's only the database credentials. Okay, so basically I've copied my database credentials to that, and I've removed the $signs and I removed the semicolons, and now I'm using this technique instead. So if I save this and I now visit my website, it says connected successfully. So as an illustration, if I had removed or if I had changed anything, any of the variables inside of the environment file, for example, let's change the database name to underscore myd instead of db, and I save those changes and I try and reload my website index page, I'm going to get an error because the environment variables are set incorrectly, and the index file cannot refer to those variables or connect to the database because those variables are not correct. So I'm just going to revert that and change it back to _mydb. Save the changes, go to my index file, refresh my browser, and it says connected successfully again. So now we know how to correctly set our database credentials to be hidden away. Okay, and so you'll also see that when a file is named .env on your server, by clicking on my file and then right clicking, I can go to change permissions. I can set these off so that no one is able to access that folder except me. I don't want anyone to be able to read or write or execute anything inside of that file. And so if I change those permissions, but I reload my page, it obviously will give me an error there, because I should actually set this to be able to read for this user, but not for any groups or for world. Okay, so I'm going to change my permissions to that, and I'm going to reload my page, and that should still say connected successfully. Okay, so yeah, another thing that we can do is we can hide our environment variables so no one can see it. There should be no reason to worry about that because you shouldn't be able to see it anyways. I can go to settings and then I can click on show hidden files and uncheck that. If I click on save, you will see that the .env file is no longer visible inside of my public_html directory. Okay, but since I'm working on the server, I might want to put that on and click on save. Okay, so yeah, that concludes everything for this tutorial, and I would just like to mention that similar techniques that we've used in this tutorial is what we will be using when we create a SMTP email server for our website. So that concludes everything for this tutorial. I hope to see you in the next one.